rental or ownership pass through is going to come off of people who make their money off of digital nomadism. That somehow most of the services are just going to be provided through the internet. And so, essentially inflow of trade, capital inflows come through somewhere. Somebody is paying somebody who lives on the property for their remote work. I don't think that's enough to sustain like a larger settlement. Obviously, it could be enough to sustain one person, but that doesn't mean it becomes a network state. Network state's supposed to be a larger project. So, there's all sorts of possibilities, but ultimately, they are going to be described by one way or another trade surplus. Either you have physical goods or you have intangible services and intangible things. So you could have added value, goods come in, goods go out. You could have things grown on the property. Most of what grows on any particular property would be agricultural in nature, or if you have a mine or somewhere where there's something primarily sourced in its origin. You could have energy production if a place knows how to make a lot of surplus energy and then transport it out. I mean, these are all expensive realities. These are all real businesses. And then there's tourism, which is people come in, people go out. So it's physically the shipping of human beings constantly in and out. So it really depends on what that network state is, because location, transportation determine in large part economics, right? Proximity to your customer, proximity to your suppliers, and also the methods of delivery. Prospera, for example, which is like this one big network state that's, currently doing better than many others in terms of its people know about it and what's going on there. They have a pretty good setup in terms of their proximity to the U.S., right? You take a plane flight to Honduras, and I think now there's actually even some direct flights from Florida to Roatan.
Oh, wow.
So, that's so it's really every network state area is going to be really determined and delineated by some of the basics, like how do you get there, right? It's such a simple thing, but if it wants to grow, that method of getting there and getting stuff there, cargo, people, obviously information now with, right, you have Starlink, now you can basically get information anywhere. That's the big change. So people think that will open up great possibilities, and it will, but getting places is certainly important. I'm somewhat bearish, generally speaking, and have been for many, many years before the network state, on the idea of starting successful economic projects, cities, towns in places that are far away, very far away. A lot of people want to live at the edge of the world. That's a good place for a monastery, perhaps, but not a functioning city, town, or business. And most monasteries historically were actually created near functioning cities and had to interact with them. So even so, it's like what can you really build at the edge of the world, or the edge of where you can get to? Maybe not very much. It just becomes more difficult. So I'm not very
Well, look, what's your perspective on Balage's idea that we need to basically become independent politically eventually once we gain enough traction on land, versus to do it coordination style, which means not having government involved in our actions? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess both of those could actually be two sides of the same coin, because it's really more temporal. If a set of projects that abide by certain common standards, specifically, let's say what type of money and maybe identity protocols to use, right? If a certain group of people, which eventually scales to a few million people across the world, does that, and they do it consistently, over time, one would expect that, if they keep doing that, it's just like compound interest.